So you might recognize this face from a classic 80s sitcom, right? But the real story, wow, it's about an actress and advocate named Melanie Watson, and her story is all about quiet courage and a legacy that, honestly, helped change television. Let's dive in.
Yeah, if you grew up in the 80s, you definitely remember her. Her appearances on the beloved sitcom Diff'rent Strokes were just so warm, so funny, absolutely unforgettable. She was often right there on screen with the show's star, Gary Coleman.
But her story, her influence, it goes so much deeper than just a few TV spots. Her life was this incredible example of taking some really tough personal challenges and turning them into a mission for everyone.
Okay, so let's get into it. First, remembering Melanie Watson. We're talking about Melanie Watson Barnhart, who very sadly passed away recently on December 26, 2025. She was just 57 years old. Her brother Robert was the one who shared the news. She passed away in Colorado Springs, Colorado, after complications from a brief hospital stay. He's her surviving family member.
Now, to really get her story, you've got to understand the context of her entire life. Melanie lived with something called osteogenesis imperfecta. You might know it as brittle bone disease. It's a rare genetic condition that causes incredibly fragile bones along with other physical challenges right from birth. And when you know that, it just makes everything she accomplished even more remarkable. So, let's talk about her groundbreaking role and how it changed television. Because it was that exact lived experience, everything she dealt with day to day, that she brought to her most famous role. And man, it was a role that would quietly start to change everything.
So here are the facts. She was on Diff'rent Strokes for 4 episodes, playing Kathy Gordon, who was a friend of Arnold Jackson. But the one everyone remembers, it's that 1982 episode simply called Kathy. It tackled disability with so much humor and so much heart. The whole plot was about Arnold's, well-meaning but kinda clumsy attempts to get her to walk. And that storyline, it really hit home for a lot of people.
And you have to put this in perspective, right? This was the early 1980s. Seeing an actress who actually used a wheelchair in real life portraying a character on a huge network sitcom, that was almost unheard of. It was this quiet but incredibly powerful statement about inclusion in an era that, frankly, had very little of it on our TV screen. Years later, Melanie herself looked back on it. She said she actually regretted not realizing sooner just how important her work on the show was to all those fans who, for the first time, saw themselves reflected on screen. Wow. It's just such a poignant reminder that sometimes you only see the true impact of what you've done way later. But here's the thing. That positive, smiling presence on screen, it was hiding a very different reality. Behind the scenes, the struggle she faced just to do her job, it was immense.
I mean, look at this contrast. On screen, she's portraying this warm, funny, integrated friend. But the reality off screen? She was navigating an industry that was just not ready for her. In an interview she gave in 2020, she remembered how the production sets had basically no accommodations. Get this, she said she sometimes had to be physically carried because there was no equipment, no ramps, nothing. Just think about that for a second.
So is it any surprise that after going through all that, after experiencing those barriers firsthand, she decided to dedicate her life to making sure other people wouldn't have to? It makes total sense. She found this powerful new purpose, a life of advocacy.
So here's what that new chapter looked like. After Diff'rent Strokes wrapped up in '86, she retired from acting, but her work, it was far from over. She took all that energy and channeled it into making a real, tangible difference. First, she co-founded a nonprofit. And then, decades later, in 2020, she actually launched a campaign for the Colorado State Senate.
And let's look at these highlights in our advocacy work. Her nonprofit was called Train Right, and it had this absolutely brilliant mission. It trained shelter dogs to become service animals for people who needed them. How amazing is that? Then, her run for public office was this huge, bold move to take that same fight for inclusion and accessibility to a much broader stage. Unfortunately, she did have to withdraw from the race for health reasons, but the attempt itself was so significant. Okay, so when you put it all together, her acting, the private struggles she faced behind the scenes, and then her public life of advocacy, you start to see the complete picture of her legacy. And what is it? It's the legacy of a quiet but incredibly determined trailblazer.
4. That's the number. And what's just astonishing is that the entire foundation of this incredible legacy was built on something that seems so small on the surface. Just 4 episodes of television. That's it. 4.
So that really makes you wonder, right? How did 4 episodes, just 4,
helped change the entire conversation on disability in America. How is that even possible?
Well, the answer really boils down to one simple, powerful idea: representation. Just by being there on a top-rated show, her presence blew up the norms of the day. Think about it. For millions and millions of viewers, she was the first positive, funny, totally relatable character they'd ever seen on TV who also happened to have a disability. It just proves beyond a shadow of a doubt that a small role can have a massive, massive cultural impact.
So when you look at her whole life, Melanie Watson's story is just this powerful reminder, isn't it? That the biggest changes, they don't always come from the loudest voices. They often come from the quiet trailblazers. And that kind of leaves you with a final thought. Whose quiet contributions are shaping our world today?